welcome, everyone. This is the Conscious Chicano. Welcome to Conscious Chat number 38. And it's one of my favorite topics, terrain theory in the Bible. As you guys know, I'm a terrain theorist. I've been actually studying health and wellness for a while, and I'm a certified health coach as well. And I also study indigenous traditional approaches to health and wellness. And, I've actually explored a lot of, you know, um, old school or traditional approaches to health and wellness, and been very critical of the last, few years, if you know what I'm talking about, the scamdemic. And and I've been involved in the health and freedom movement as well. And and I'm also a Christian, so I see in the terrain. If you guys don't know what terrain theory is, there's usually two theories in, say, the health industry. Uh, the first theory is germ theory, and the opposing. So there's germ theorists, and then there's opposing people who are terrain theorists. And so you got these two views all the way back in history that opposed each other. And so for you to understand what a terrain theorist, you kind of have to understand what a germ theorist is. So germ theorist is kind of like the mainstream view in the health industry or the medical field, and they typically think that they believe that that diseases are caused by germs. That germs are the enemy, um, and basically they believe that the germs, such as viruses and bacteria, are the cause of disease, or what you call infectious disease, you know, and they blame everything on a virus and bacteria. And they have, their remedies for that. Usually it's, pharmaceuticals, or, toxic jabs and all that. And, and they also believe in what's called contagion theory, which means that infectious disease spreads everywhere and causes people to get sick and ill and die. And a lot of germ theorists are, in a sense, kind of like germaphobes. They're the ones, promoting the mask and social distancing, and, you know, not touching certain things, not breathing in certain areas, and this and that. So those are the germ theories, and it could lead you to being a germaphobe. And I used to be a germ theorist, when I was ignorant, a germaphobe and everything. So, and then as you gain more understanding of health and wellness and start studying this more deeply, you'll find out that there's a problem with this whole germ theory, and there's even contradictions. And so the terrain theories love to pretty much expose that. And the terrain theory of, health and wellness or disease, their perspective is that that illness is caused. There's multiple factors to illness and disease, and it's not one cause. So terrain theorists will say it's your overall well-being that results in disease and illness. And instead of emphasizing infectious disease, terrain theorists emphasize more like chronic disease than anything else. So, disease is is due to the conditions of the person. It's not due to a single germ. Um, and so terrain theorists will say that there's multiple factors in why people get sick and ill. And one of the factors is that, oh, you're eating terrible food, you're eating genetically modified, food that lack nutrients and they're full of toxicities, pesticides, insecticides. Um, Another factor that causes sickness and illness is nutrient deficiency. If you're not getting certain vitamins and minerals in you, um, you know, certain all these essential nutrients. There's a famous guy named Dr. Wallach who talks about this: getting your 90 essential nutrients in your body, supplying your body, with what it needs to prevent illness, to live longer. And so, in a sense, that's a major factor right there. And a lot of people are deficient. And when you have a nutrient deficiency, it may result in disrupting your homeostasis. Homeostasis is more like a balance that it's an ideal balance of health and wellness. So if you're lacking certain nutrients, it may result in a malfunctioning of your system, of your body, and it will result, possibly in a disease. So, and many people are deficient out here because they're not taking essential nutrients and they're eating foods that are lacking in nutrients. Um, so the terrain theorists say terrible food, lack of nutrients, um, you know, and another factor is stress. Stress causes illness and disease. It breaks you down, right? Um, Over stress, right? Your thoughts, right? Your emotions, negative thoughts, negative emotions, um, toxic emotions, toxic thoughts, Um, a lot of times, terrain theorists will say the major problem is what's called toxemia. Toxemia is like toxicities, holistic toxicity in a sense. And what it is people are eating terrible foods, drinking alcohol, drinking all these sugars, you know, um, living an unhealthy lifestyle, having toxic thoughts, toxic emotions, being in a toxic environment, even living in a industrialized toxic environment, and that can affect your health as well. Even being around toxic people that stress you out and they create chaos in your life and everything. So the terrain theorists will say that disease is a result of, you know, it's a holistic result of toxicities in your life. And the key to health and wellness is to detoxify in every aspect of your life. So they don't blame one germ as as a cause of disease. And matter of fact, the terrain theorists will say that not all germs are bad for you. Actually, our whole body consists of germs. And so we have to stop thinking like the germ theorists and thinking that germs are bad and evil, are the cause of sickness and illness. And matter of fact, most bacterias, you know, most of them are actually good for you and they're actually they serve as janitors to clean up your system. And that's what the function of bacteria, fungi, parasites, all that right there. So they're not the bad guys. They're the ones actually eating up the toxicities in your body. Oh, let's see here. Something happened here. Let me start this up again. There it goes. All right. They changed my my background. So yeah. So anyways, um, So as I was getting back to this, yeah, sometimes my camera just goes off all of a sudden. I think maybe they just don't like what I'm saying. You know the way YouTube is and everything. But so terrain theory sees toxemia as part of the problem, and the germs in your body are not the big bad boogeymans, right? um, the bacteria serve a purpose in your body is to and the bacteria, parasites, fungi, all that serve a purpose to detoxify your body, to get rid of also cell debris, um, things that your body doesn't need and doesn't want, so this that serves a purpose, you know so we got to stop seeing germs as something that we have to get rid of, and we need to get rid of them with antibiotics. And actually, antibiotics actually destroy your microbiome, and these medical doctors are always prescribing antibiotics, antibiotics, and actually they destroy the bacteria that you need in your gut in order to be healthy, in order to detox and everything. So that's part of the problem. And most of the medical field is it depends. Their whole philosophy is basically the germ theory of disease, and all the way back, the medical field is they're called allopaths. That means they use their approaches to diagnose disease and to give you a so-called solution, which is pharmaceuticals or jabs. And this goes all the way back, like in time, where there was actually a beef between um, the allopaths and the naturopaths. And the naturopaths, they what happens is the Rockefellers, they actually funded the allopaths because they saw it as a profitable industry to invest in pharmaceuticals and jabs and everything, and no funding went to the naturopaths. And so there's, in a sense, wasn't much to even make money off something that you can get naturally to actually heal yourself, to prevent disease, or even to reverse it. And so the naturopaths were more into, like, okay, a holistic approach, and they dealt with the human being holistically, and they're very critical of the allopathic approach, which they would try to pinpoint a germ as the cause, and then give you a pharmaceutical or a jab as a result. So, and this beef goes back to the allopaths versus the naturopaths, and it even goes back to early germ theory, where you had Louis Pasteur versus Antoine Beauchamp. Beauchamp was more like a terrain theorist. Louis Pasteur was a germ theorist, and Louis Pasteur was, he made fraudulent studies, and he claimed that he proved contagion when he actually didn't. And he actually, instead, he injected people with some toxic jabs. I actually injected animals. Let me take that back. Injected animals and claimed that, oh, this was, he proved contagion, which that's not how you prove contagion. Contagion, if you want to prove it, you have to actually prove it with, you know, how you call it, when someone's near somebody else who's, you have a sick person and someone who's not sick, and and this person coughs and sneezes or exchanges fluid or different things, and so the sick person causes the person who's not sick to get sick, and so um, and this contagion, there's actually been a lots of early contagion studies um, from a long time ago that has actually debunked the contagion theory, and they couldn't prove contagion. and and so you have these germ theory versus terrain theory, right? The germ theorists want to blame germs and viruses and bacteria on as the cause of disease. And the terrain theorists say no, it's a holistic approach. It's and many terrain theorists will say bacteria serves as janitors. They're not the bad guys, and they will even point out that viruses don't exist by the fact that in all the medical studies, all the scientific studies out here on virus, you know, claims that viruses exist. When terrain scientists and doctors look into their studies, they find out there's a flawed methodology, a flawed process in the claim that viruses exist. And matter of fact, they say that when these virologists they they claim that they isolated particles and claim that they isolated a virus. Usually, virologists point out to a contaminated cell culture. And so the terrain scientists and medical doctors will say that that your contaminated cell culture is not isolation, right? When you get a sick person's fluid and you put it in a contaminated cell culture full of chemicals, and you put antibiotics in it, you starve the cell culture. um, it's like you mix it with all this other monkey cells and different things like that. The deterioration of that cell culture, is not what you say is a virus. And so the way the terrain theories are is like they're saying that you have to go by the textbook definition of isolation, meaning separating a particle from everything else in a sense. And virologists have never proven to even done such isolation. And so terrain theories are very critical. They don't believe in viruses. And so if you don't prove that viruses even exist, then you can't. The next step is even trying to prove contagion, which that has been debunked in lots of studies. And it even goes all the way back to the so-called Spanish flu in their studies, where they couldn't even prove that the Spanish flu was contagious. And they actually did experiments and got, sick and unsick people, and they tried proving it, and it never worked out. Um, so you have this beef between germ theories and terrain theories. Now that I actually explained that to you, now let's get a let's deal with the whole Bible and terrain theory. So I see a lot of people in the terrain community out here. A lot of them are atheists. A lot of them are um, they're anti-Bible, and that um, they claim that a lot of the virus theory and germ theory comes from the Bible. And me, as a Christian and a terrain theorist, I will dispute that. And so I've actually looked into the whole. Um, I looked into the Bible, both Old Testament and New Testament, when it comes to disease and illness. And 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 see, back in those days, there was no concept of a virus, right? There was no concept of bacteria, you know, as even the cause of disease, or they just didn't have that whole concept. And matter of fact, the claim that viruses exist, um, they claim that they confirmed it when they invented the electron microscope. and that was in the early 1900s. You know, um, and so prior to that, their claim is that never they never supposedly confirmed that viruses even exist. Now, terrain theorists will even dispute the whole electron microscope claim that viruses exist. And matter of fact, they'll say that these people who claim that viruses exist through the electron microscope is they're actually looking at cell deterioration of that contaminated culture, and they're not actually looking at a virus. So, but the Bible doesn't mention any viruses and bacteria. So we have to not accuse the Bible of being germ theorists, or in a sense going along with germ theory. So I hear a lot of terrain theorists saying, well, it's the blame of the supernatural, which eventually became the blame of viruses as the cause of disease. I wouldn't say that's true, actually. And I've even heard some Christians even trying to say this, like they would try to use the Bible to justify the belief in, the scamdemic. I can't say certain words here because I'll get banned and censored. But the C disease, you know which one I'm talking about. The one that they claim, you know, that was a cause of these past few years, right? I'll just call it the C disease. So I've heard Christians trying to say, well, yeah, in the Bible, it talks about plagues and pestilence and this and that. And so I went and started digging into this. And so, what was the cause of disease in the Bible? And so I was looking for causes of disease in the Bible, and nowhere did I find anything about viruses or bacteria or germs as the cause of disease. Okay. So whenever the Bible talked about plagues and pestilence, and usually those were synonymous, plagues and pestilence. And what I found in the Bible is like, okay, you go into the Old Testament. Usually they talk about the Egyptian plagues or something like that. You go in the New Testament, you hear about the Book of Revelations. That there's going to be plagues in um, in the end times and this and that. So I looked at the cause of these plagues, and there were never viruses and bacteria. Okay, so any germ theorists that wants to use the Bible to justify their germ theory, you could say that's not biblical. And matter of fact, in the Bible, um, there was many causes of disease, and one of the causes is that was sin. And so sin was a cause of disease in the Bible. So, and what is sin? It's like it's wickedness, right? Living a wicked lifestyle, unhealthy lifestyle. And so it's a impure, immoral, wicked lifestyle. And so, um, and at times it's like you can actually, that's actually in agreement with the terrain theory. Um, so the terrain theorists can actually agree that living an unhealthy lifestyle is a sinful lifestyle. So as a Christian terrain theorist, I'll say, wait, that's in agreement with terrain theory right there, because terrain theorists say if you're living an unhealthy lifestyle, this is what causes sickness and illness. So sin is, that's actually very reasonable. We have the Bible that's very reasonable in determining that, that, sin can lead to sickness and illness. A matter of fact, disobedience of God And what is disobedience? God gives us instructions on how to live, right? And if we don't follow those instructions, guess what happens? Sin entered the world. Um, and, and sin, eventually affected everything else. Like Adam and Eve, when they first sinned, they brought sin into the world. They disobeyed God, and that the result of was that prior to the sin entering the world, everything was perfect, right? You had the Garden of Eden. Um, Adam and Eve were living. They were in a sense they were immortal. They were perfect human beings, but when they disobeyed God, sin entered the world, and then there was decay that entered the world, and that's when Adam and Eve eventually, they died, and so were, everything else, so it affected all of nature and even humans. And so this is what happens when you don't follow God's instructions. And then at times, God gave Moses instructions, and give Israel instructions to follow, because they were living an unhealthy, wicked, sinful lifestyle. And and they even have even like instructions on eating certain foods, and certain foods were clean and certain foods were unclean. And they had a very good reason on why certain foods were unclean, you know, and and obviously certain foods were not healthy for you, right? That's why even the whole, even to this very day, they a lot of Hebrews, they eat kosher food. They don't eat certain foods, right? Um, and so we have this in the Old Testament, right? And even what was considered an unclean person, usually being unclean was, oh, that meant you're ritually unclean, right? So the Hebrews back then believed that you had to be ritually clean. You had to do certain rituals in order to be clean, right? But also, uncleanliness was due to the fact that people, had, they were eating unclean foods, and the result of them even eating unclean food may have resulted in being sick and ill. So that you were stigmatized as being unclean, and even if you had some kind of manifestation of some kind of disease and everything, you were considered unclean. Now we're getting into what's called. I actually looked into the Bible and I couldn't find hardly any categories of disease. When they talked about pestilence and plagues, it was usually something caused. It was caused supernaturally or naturally, like natural phenomena, natural disasters, stuff that occurred in the environment. But sometimes it was due to the judgment of God. It was because of supernatural, like God's punishment and judgment upon for exist, for example, the Egyptians, right? They got the plague. It was supernaturally caused, right? But it was not caused by a so-called natural phenomenon such as bacteria or a virus. So we can't claim that the Bible was promoting germ theory, and so it was caused by the supernatural judgment of God, and so we have that. So, but so here's the thing: is there was many causes of illness in the Old Testament, and sometimes it was natural, sometimes it was supernatural, right? It was God's judgment, or sometimes it was just also humans brought it about through sin, living a wicked, unhealthy lifestyle, eating unclean foods, and so we have the whole concept of leprosy, and so now so I was actually looking into the categories of disease in the Bible, and one of them was leprosy, another one was fever, um, other ones were like plagues and pestilence, um, and even demonic possession, and even that was considered a disease. Now, plague and pestilence did not mean it did not always mean disease. Let me take that back. It 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 for example, you looked at the plagues and pestilence of Egypt. There was God punished them with like a bunch of like frogs, right? Or different phenomena, and didn't necessarily mean disease. Now, the Bible does mention boils occurring, but that was supernaturally, right? And I was thinking, well, maybe God does use even the natural realm, like and supernaturally intertwined, but it was not germs or viruses, right? It's just maybe God used His supernatural intervention to bring judgment on wicked people, right, for their disobedience, right? And so we can admit that the supernatural cause of disease is in the Bible, but it's not equal to viruses and bacteria, right? And a matter of fact, in the New Testament, when Jesus actually healed people, there was times where he casted out a spirit of infirmity. Okay, and so and many cultures around the world, even believe that disease has supernatural origins as well, and it's demonic possession. Usually they'll call it demons or evil spirits, um, and so this is a phenomenon that's anthropologically attested, confirmed, right? And so the claim that the Bible is, when we have a modern day medical perspective and think that every disease is just strictly material, this is the problem with the whole medical field too, as well, because as a terrain theorist, we consider everything holistically, right? And so, psychology, your mind, the soul, emotions, all that spiritual, right? There is a spirit realm, right? And there are, if you're not an atheist or strict materialist, you will at usually you usually believe in the supernatural, the spirit realm. And so the Bible's claim that disease may be caused by demonic possession or infirmity spirits. I wouldn't actually dismiss that. I would say that's actually reasonable to even believe in that, and there's been instances in even modern times where people who have been sick and ill, and Christians have prayed over them and casted out a spirit of infirmity out of them, and all of a sudden the person eventually becomes healed, or even at they're healed, and a miracle occurs at times, either instantaneously or through a process of a period of time. So that has been even confirmed, and there's research on that. So I wouldn't dismiss the spiritual realm as a possible cause of disease. Now, I wouldn't believe that all diseases are caused by evil spirits. Okay, there's both natural and spiritual, and psychological, and many many contributions, many factors to sickness and illness. But the Bible, in its claim that, or evidence of that disease can be caused by evil spirits, it's actually reasonable. So I wouldn't dismiss the Bible on that. Um, so we have that. So so when it comes to disease, fever, okay. So fever is not really a disease. It's just, as a terrain theorist, will say that fever is something that your body actually, it's a mechanism for you to heal, right? It's a self-healing mechanism, you know. And the modern medical field will say, "Oh, fever. Oh, we got to give you all this prescription drugs and this and that." And the more prescription drugs they give you, the worse they make you, and they don't actually get to the root problem, right? So, uh, fever, back in the day, like, people would see that as a disease, um, and we got to think during Bible times, you know, they were not really advanced in their knowledge in terms of health and wellness, but I wouldn't say that they were primitive. They were onto some things that were true. A matter of fact, um, you have Paul, who had like stomach issues, and he even recommended, drinking, wine, for his, stomach infirmity, right? And there's just a natural approach to it, right? The Bible even talks about eating, clean food or healthier food. You had Daniel. At times he went on fasting, for a certain period of time, during the year. It wasn't a lifestyle. The Daniel fast wasn't a lifestyle, but because a lot of these vegans misinterpret Daniel and make it a vegan lifestyle. But Daniel only ate, he only ate like vegetables, pure vegetables, and he went on that Daniel diet for only short period of time of the year, and then he went back to his kosher food, right? So it was just kind of like the Daniel diet was used for kind of like a detoxification, and he didn't eat like the bad food like the people of the kings, the elites of Babylon at that time. So the Bible does instruct even certain herbs and certain ointments for health and wellness as well. So the Bible does talk about health and wellness both naturally and supernaturally. So we can't dismiss the Bible and say that everything is primitive or superstitious and all that. That's the strict materialist atheist point of view. And matter of fact, the Bible does have wisdom on health and wellness, and but I couldn't really find anything on contagion in the Bible. The only time I found it, so you had pestilence and plagues, right? And usually it was other things besides disease. But you do have what's called boils, okay? Um, and that could be explained. I mean, boils, it was actually in the Bible, the context of the Bible, it was God's judgment and was not caused by viruses and bacteria, right? But the terrain perspective on boils and all that, is that the body just has, it creates bumps, or or certain you know lesions or bumps in the skin, and it's not really a disease. It's actually your body detoxifying because you're full of toxicities, right? And you could have eaten something terrible, or you constantly eating it all the time, and it doesn't go away because the source of what you're eating is very toxic. You're in a toxic environment. You get exposed to chemicals, There's been people who worked in the mines, exposed to toxic chemicals and all that, and they all of a sudden have these bumps all over them. Your skin starts breaking out. It's because your skin is trying to repel these toxicities. Um, and so when you form these boils and all that, people think it's due to contagion, and matter of fact, it's due to toxicities. Your body's just trying to get rid of all these toxicities in your inside your body. So we got to stop thinking of boils and all that as infectious disease. So I was looking into the Bible to see, looking for what categories of disease do we have that's supposedly contagion, right? And the only one where I thought about was I came across was in the Old Testament, the concept of leprosy. Now the whole concept of leprosy, back in the Old Testament, they didn't have a concept of virus and bacteria back then. So we gotta stop thinking of germ theory and stop imposing that on the Bible. The Bible does not promote germ theory. And matter of fact, when someone had leprosy back then, um, they couldn't they it doesn't really say what caused leprosy in the Old Testament, um, and they just dealt with it. And so when someone had leprosy, they were shunned from society. It's because, yeah, they didn't have advanced knowledge on health and wellness back then. And obviously, it's just a natural reaction when you see someone full of, like, you know, um, disformities of the skin and all that. Um, when you see them with, skin like bumps and all that, and lesions and all that. Like, obviously, the natural reaction is, oh, I need to stay away from that person, right? And so that was the result. Is like they were shunned from society. They were, and so um, that's how they dealt with people back then. And and back then the Hebrews didn't really have um, advanced knowledge, you know, on the cause and even the remedy for it. But what they did is when they dealt with someone who had leprosy, is they waited for them to basically heal. And what happened is the Jewish, I mean the Hebrew priests at that time would check up on them to see if they still had that leprosy, and if they didn't have it, then they would do a ritual cleansing, which involved herbs and different things like that, and then they were admitted into society. So um, that's how they dealt with it. But leprosy, from a terrain perspective, I looked into this, and basically, actually, the medical field tries to blame a bacteria on leprosy, right? And so the terrain theorists will be critical of that and say that, well, actually, there was scientists and medical doctors that disputed that early on in a lot of the germ theory versus terrain theory history. And terrain theorists will say, no, bacteria is actually good for you. It's there to clean up your system from toxicities, right? And so, what is the result? What is the cause of leprosy? Well, even the terrain theorists will say, well, it could be multiple factors, and what's noticeable is that when people have so-called leprosy, is they're very deficient in nutrients, right? There's a deficiency that they have. There's also they a lot of them lack protein, right? And so you could say they're malnourished, right? And matter of fact, leprosy is very rare, and that's actually even been confirmed by terrain medical doctors and scientists, and it's very rare. And matter of fact, some will say that there's even evidence of of instances where people who had leprosy at times were eating bad fish that has that wasn't that was actually fish that went bad, so even your food, if it's not healthy, if you're eating certain foods that end up bad, like you know that are rotten, and are not really bioavailable, um, it can even affect you, and the result is your body ends up going having bumps and all that. Your body wants to get rid of all that what you just consumed and all that. And um, so there's many factors on why people develop what's called leprosy, and the terrain theorists will say, well, usually it's malnutrition or toxicities, either in the environment or something you consumed, you know, and that's usually the case. And there's actually evidence that in Europe they had a high rate of leprosy at one time, and they got rid of it because due to better sanitation policies. And they said that when they started cleaning up the environment and cleaning up, everything around them, having better sanitation, that leprosy just disappeared pretty much, you know. And when you have unhealthy conditions, you live in a unhealthy condition full of toxic environments, that can result in you getting having so-called symptoms of what's even called leprosy. So, and even back in the Middle East during the Bible times, leprosy was like, it was like throughout history, the category of leprosy was, they would label all kinds of diseases as leprosy back then. So they didn't really have a lot of advanced knowledge, in terms of disease back then. But usually, when people had certain diseases, it would be under the umbrella of leprosy, and and so even the whole concept of leprosy has not been consistent. So you could have had different symptoms. You may not have even been you may not even had a disease. You may have had like certain symptoms and you were labeled as a leopard, or you may have had different types of a different type of disease, and because the symptoms were similar, you were categorized as having leprosy. So even the category of leprosy is not consistent and very vague in the sense. So we have to be aware of that as well. So, and that's the only thing that I can find in the Bible where they label something as leprosy, but the Bible never mentions anything being caused by a virus or by bacteria or any germ, because they didn't have that concept back then. And so the Bible does mention that the cause of disease is usually sin. What is sin? Living an unhealthy, wicked lifestyle. Another factor is eating terrible foods, what they categorize as unclean, right? Um, at times, supernatural causes, right? You had spirit of infirmities, right? And all that's pretty reasonable even in modern times. So I wouldn't dismiss the Bible, because the Bible does have wisdom on health and wellness. Um, and so So that's a terrain perspective. Now, I just mentioned the Old Testament. The New Testament has a different approach to health and wellness. So back in the Old Testament, you had to be ritually clean, right? You had to go through all these rituals, right? But Jesus, when he ushered in the new covenant, Jesus was, in my perspective, the ultimate terrain theorist. When everyone in the old, the Hebrews of, of ancient times and all that goes all the way back to the Old Testament, they were afraid of leopards, right? They were scared, right? They were, oh, don't be around that leopard, right? Um, but Jesus, in my perspective, was the ultimate terrain theorist. He was the only one that wasn't scared of leopards, and he went over there and prayed over them, and they got healed, right? Healed of their, boils or lesions, and and so Jesus was not afraid of. He wasn't a paranoid germ theorist, right? And so Christians, if you want, you're claiming you're a follower of Christ, right? You shouldn't even be a germ theorist. And I don't understand why these churches, when this whole scamdemic happened, why they started closing down and they started promoting masks, and they just became scaredy cats, and they were big time germ theorists, when in fact Jesus was not a germ theorist. He was a terrain theorist in my perspective. And he was not afraid of germs. He was not afraid of bacteria and viruses. He actually went over there and prayed over people, and that's how Christians should be. So the new covenant no longer requires ritual cleansing, right? Now you're washed in the blood of the lamb. Jesus died for us, right? He died for everyone's infirmities and sickness and illness, right? And if you're a follower in Christ, you shouldn't be a germ theorist. You shouldn't be afraid of viruses and germs out here. But we still got Christians out here who are so ignorant and so brainwashed by the mainstream media that they're still walking in churches with masks on. They're still paranoid of germs everywhere. And there's people like that in the churches. But Jesus was not a germ theorist, and we should follow the example of Jesus. And there's some Christians who are like that. I've been part of ministries where they're healing ministries where people have, really terrible diseases in the skin and all that. And there's some strong brothers and sisters out there that go up to these people and just lay hands on them and pray over them. And 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 there's many times they get healed, and there's miracles that occur. um, and so we have to be just like Jesus, just pray over them, pray for them, and that's a big step of faith. I know a lot of people don't want to do that, but don't be afraid of germs and viruses. If you're a Christian, you should be a natural terrain theorist. That's what you should be. You shouldn't even be a germ theorist at all. You shouldn't be afraid of bacteria and so-called virus. If you're a terrain theorist, you don't believe that viruses exist. So what is there to even be afraid of and be paranoid of, right? And you should have a more advanced knowledge of health and wellness. How disease is due to multiple factors. It's the condition of the person, eating terrible foods, lacking nutrients, lack of sleep, stressed out, toxic environments, right? Pharmaceuticals, all these jabs, all this stuff is causing illness in people. As a terrain theorist, we don't believe in infectious disease. We believe more like chronic disease than anything else. We have one of the highest rates of chronic disease in the industrial world and all that. So we definitely, Christians should be natural terrain theorists, and we shouldn't be worried and scared about viruses and bacterias and all that. So, anyways, but so I just wanted to address that because there's many in the terrain theory camp that are atheists, and they dismiss the Bible and they say, "Oh, that's the source of virus theory," and that's not true. That's not true. Um, the biblical times, they didn't believe in viruses. They didn't believe in bacteria as the cause of disease. They didn't even have that, beliefs, and there's no evidence of that in the Bible. What they believed is sin, living an unhealthy lifestyle, wicked lifestyle, supernatural causes, um, even natural causes as well were the result, that cause disease out there, and so we can't dismiss the Bible. Matter of fact, the Bible even talks about eating, healthier food and even taking herbs and ointments and, having a healthy mindset, the mind of Christ, having faith, casting spirit of infirmities out of people who are sick and ill, tap into to God's supernatural power and all that for health and wellness. Um, and so the Bible actually offers wisdom on health and wellness. So we have to stop accusing Christianity and the Bible as being the root of germ theory, and that's totally not true. Um, anyways, I let me get to the questions or comments here. There's a lot of them. That's the end of my discussion. And so let me see. How's it going, everyone? Thanks for coming in. How's it? I'm gonna address comments. If you have any questions or comments, uh, definitely feel free to drop them on in the comment section. So let's see here. How's it going? Casual conversation. Good to see you. Um, okay, so let's see here. So somebody says that they have a skin condition called vitil, vitiligo, where you lose your skin color. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I actually looked into that stuff right there, and what they considered autoimmune disease. Now, there's people who don't believe in autoimmune disease. It's like people like Dr. Wallach, and even so the typical medical industry will tell you that, oh, somehow your immune system went haywire and is attacking itself, right? And they claim vitiligo is the immune system attacking your skin, right? Pigmentation and all this and that. Um, well, there's people who disagree with that mainstream view of autoimmune disease, and there's many different perspectives on this, but uh, one of them, there's a guy named Dr. Gundry. He says a lot of what they call actually autoimmune disease is not even a self attack in the sense where it's just your body, you're eating toxins, in certain foods and especially plants, what he calls lectins. And when you're consuming these in your system, it destroys the gut. It causes like um, your gut to have like holes in the sense. And what happens is when you consume all this unhealthy food and you have a gut that's compromised, it goes straight into your blood, and these and all these toxins go into your blood, and then it travels into your tissue and organs and all that. And so what happens is your body sees that as okay, I need to get rid of those toxins. And sometimes these toxins intertwine with the tissue, with the organs, and so this is what happens. The body wants to get rid of that, and so the modern medical field will say, oh, this is a self attack and there's no cause. We don't know the cause, right? It's just your body going haywire, and somehow it's schizophrenic, right? No, the body has more intelligence. It has its body is very intelligent, and so Dr. Gundry discovered that lectins is a toxin that goes in your system, and your body wants to get rid of it, and so that whole thing about the losing pigmentation, be your skin is one of the biggest organs in your body, And so I wouldn't be surprised that there's some kind of toxin that's going in your skin that you're probably eating. And we actually have proof of this is that when you go on a healthier lifestyle, you go, possibly a elimination diet. Maybe try even Dr. Gundry's diet, where you get rid of lectins in your diet, and try to get the plant paradox if you ever get a chance. And what happens is people eventually their pigmentation is like either it stops or you start gaining your pigmentation. I guess the loss of pigmentation stops, and there could I'm not too sure if it reverses, but it definitely you know it could be because your body somehow there's a toxin that maybe it's even because the skin is where your body releases toxins, right? So you could actually be very toxic, and this is where your body is trying to get rid of these toxins, and maybe your skin is full of toxicity. So you might want to try changing your diet. And I've seen people who've changed their diet and they either stopped the vitiligo or they reversed it. Um, so there's testimonies of people who've done that. So you might want to consider that. So definitely, thanks for the comment. Actually, I researched a lot on autoimmune disease. And matter of fact, there's another guy named Dr. Wallach who doesn't believe in autoimmune disease. He says what it is the medical field has fooled everyone to believe in autoimmune disease. That somehow the body goes haywire and starts attacking itself. He says no, it's actually also deficiencies. So deficiencies, if you don't got certain essential nutrients in your body just breaks down and basically self-destructs. So you got to give the body proper nutrients and food and all that. And once you do that, the body restores itself and creates homeostasis. So even that. So we got, Gundry who talks about um, toxins in the plants. And it could, it even could be even unnatural toxins too, like pesticides, insecticides, all that GMO food, sugars, too much sugars. I've even gotten into a whole thing about even cooking oil. Be careful with that. Um, the whole seed oils and all that. This is causing a lot of problems. There's a guy named Dr. Mercola who really talks about this big time, and you find out these cooking in these seed oils is a lot of cause of sickness and illness, chronic disease out here. So you might want to cook with you know, maybe good like lard or ghee or stuff like that, and and be careful with all that fast food out there because they're just giving you lots of these toxic seed oils out here. Anyways, so yeah, there's many other views besides the mainstream view of what's called autoimmune disease. And Gundry doesn't believe in autoimmune disease. He says it's deficiencies. And I mean, Dr. Wallach, my bad. And Gundry says it's toxicities. And I will go even further saying that, yeah, it has to do with, I probably both, eating toxic food, living an unhealthy lifestyle, not getting essential nutrients and all that. So, definitely. So, so let's see here. So casual. I'm recording. I'm recording. Um, so so casual conversation says I'm scared of being sick, but I don't want to wear a mask. I get scared when my kids get sick. Oh, so yeah, you see that's you can't be full of fear because fear gets you sick too. So be careful with that kind of thinking. You shouldn't be scared, but what you should do is take action. And basically, if you're eating terribly, you're not getting essential nutrients in your body. You definitely got to get into this health and wellness if you want to be healthy and if you want your kids to be healthy as well. And if you're over there giving them all these jabs and pharmaceuticals, well, you know, they're definitely not going to be healthy. So, but also the symptoms that, that kids have, usually when we see people that have fevers, coughs, sneezes, and all that, we think of that as disease, and we can't always think of that. So symptoms happen every season: winter, hot summer, and all that. There's changes of seasons, and the body goes through detoxification seasons, right? And so, depending on if you're more toxic, the more prolonged the symptoms and more severe the symptoms. So the key is to, be less toxic, and so your symptoms won't persist, and that your symptoms won't be more severe. And definitely with kids, they get those proteins in them, vegetables, non-GMO, organic, grass fed, and get those essential nutrients in them, and have them on a healthier lifestyle. And you'll see that their symptoms are not going to be as severe and prolonged. But symptoms are also natural too. So we got to stop thinking that every symptom is a disease. It's your body naturally detoxifies. And it gets rid of whatever it doesn't want in the body. So we have to stop being living in that fear, because fear leads to illness and sickness as well. So we have to have a different mindset, a positive mindset. You know. Anyways, that's the problem with germ theory. Germ theory makes us paranoid, right? And we got to get out of that thinking. Anyways, let's see. Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll end it here. Anyways, thanks everyone for joining me and joining in this discussion and your comments definitely. So the Bible, in my view, is not germ theory. It does not support germ theory at all. There's no concept of virus in the Bible. There's no concept of bacteria. Um, and so and actually, the Bible actually supports terrain theory, if anything. And illness and sickness is multiple factors, and the Bible, confirms that there's multiple factors to sickness and illness, right? And also health and wellness. There's multiple factors to health and wellness. And most ancient societies, ancient traditions were very holistic. It was until modern times they started pushing this germ theory on everybody. But even in the Middle East and throughout the world, ancient times were very holistic in their approach to their concepts of disease and illness, and also holistic in terms of their concept of health and wellness. So we have to learn from the ancients, and a lot of times this wisdom is timeless as well. So we shouldn't even always think of, oh, these were primitive people. Maybe certain views were not highly developed, but there's some wisdom in in ancient times that actually, even I think, is even superior than our modern medical knowledge out here. And so me studying ancient traditions to health and wellness, you discover it's very holistic. Oh, let me see this. It's very holistic, and we can learn so much wisdom even from native cultures around the world, and also the Bible as well. We can learn lots of wisdom of health and wellness. Anyways, well, I'm gonna let you guys go, and if don't forget to read my description below if you want to, subscribe to this channel, give it a likes, and subscribe to my Rumble account. Add me on Instagram and Twitter. My links are all below. Anyways, well, I'm gonna end it here, and remember, don't be woke, be conscious, and have a good day.